Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. Hey, do you know that CCU is one of the few universities in the United States where students actually say the Pledge of Allegiance? It is. It's great. There's a strange silence in many other places. Well, this morning I want to speak with you for a few minutes about higher education in America. Our colleges and universities, you may know, are in trouble. You heard Betsy DeVos last night speak about the breakdown of education in the K through 12 level. And sadly, it's happening in higher education as well. There's what I call an insanity at work in the academy, where people on the outside are starting to see it as they vote with their dollars and their feet. Did you know there was a drop in undergraduate enrollment in the last 2 years of 9% in the United States? And of course, the pandemic had something to do with that, but there's other things going on where people are starting to question the value proposition of college and university for many different reasons. But why is there an insanity in the academy? In my opinion, part of it is that so many schools have a shrunken vision of higher education. I mean, they've tossed out so much of what was part of traditional education, the promotion of wisdom and character and faith, the teaching of history, passing on of our heritage. And along with that, so many schools are captivated by so-called progressive ideas that are ruining the academic quality of our universities. The way I put it is there's too much university education these days that's about deconstructing everything, including students, and that's stripping away our cultural heritage. And then along with that, they're demanding a Marxist transformation of American society. One of the articulate critics of higher education is former educator John Ellis. In his book, The Breakdown of Higher Education, he writes, "Decades of radicalization have turned America's once great universities into a monoculture of leftist orthodoxy." He says our universities are no longer devoted to the free exchange of ideas in the pursuit of truth. And he talks about the corruption of higher education by radical politics. I don't know if you ever heard of the name of Richard Weaver. Anybody hear that name? Richard Weaver wrote a very influential book in the 1940s. He was an English prof at the University of Chicago. The book has been a conservative classic. It's called Ideas Have Consequences. It was an arresting title, but in that book, Richard Weaver wanted to make the point that what is taught in the classroom and promoted in our schools, especially the universities, will in only a matter of time filter down to our streets and in the general culture. Ideas have consequences. Do you believe me? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. But let me give you a couple examples. Moral relativism, the idea that there's no truth. No objective truth. Where did that come from? Well, it came from the universities. You might remember, some of you who are older, the name Alan Bloom, another University of Chicago professor. In 1987, he wrote a very provocative book called The Closing of the American Mind, How Higher Education Has Failed Democracy and Impoverished the Souls of Today's Students. And he made the point that moral relativism being taught not only denies the notion of truth and undermines student morals, but it undermines critical thinking and philosophy and the humanities. And Bloom was a prophet speaking at a time when no one believed him. But then we wonder, why has this happened? It was the universities that had an influence. How about socialism and Marxism? Why is it gaining so much traction in the younger generation? Where are they getting from that? Where are they getting the idea that the free markets are bad? It's coming from the ideas being taught by their university teachers, that socialism is good. Here's another example, critical theory. We've heard a lot about this in the news. It's a Marxist-inspired movement in social and political philosophy applied to culture that divides everybody into two categories. You're either the oppressed or you're the oppressor. It's a Marxist construct. And the goal of critical theory is to overcome those structures through which we are oppressed. Well, you say, what are those structures? Now, to Karl Marx, those structures were the economy, the economic structures, and religion. To the neo-Marxists, the critical theorists, it's capitalism, it's heteronormativity, it's traditional family, and it's Christianity. Those ideas were taught first in the university, and we wonder why they're spreading all over. Another great example that you might not have heard of is the idea of repressive tolerance. Ooh, that's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Repressive tolerance. Do you ever wonder what happened to tolerance? The old tolerance? I do, where you listen to somebody respectfully, even if you happen to disagree with them. Well, it was Herbert Marcuse, 1965, and his ideas spreading through the university. He was a neo-Marxist, and he said, free speech must not be tolerated. Only tolerate what you agree with, and everything else should be canceled. Where did cancel culture come from? It started in the universities. Things that are played out in the street right now, and we see they're having a destructive influence on American life. And friends, when it comes to future political leadership in America, consider the fact that the vast majority of universities in America training future political leaders are training them with progressive, and I hate that word, regressive is probably a better way to put it, political beliefs to lead our government in the future. What are they being taught? They're being taught that freedom is absolute. It should be free from all authority. Absolute autonomy is being taught. Virtue does not exist. Truth doesn't count. The law has no final point of reference. God is irrelevant. Humans don't have dignity. We're not even sure if humans are special anymore. Socialism is the future. The flag and patriotism are offensive. Certain words should be banned from the classroom, like illegal alien, male and female. I'm telling you, this spells disaster for our future unless something dramatic happens on the college level. Because the left has a stranglehold on American colleges and universities. And conservatives must mount up counter strategies. We can either try to change existing schools, which will be very difficult, though some are given to that, and we're glad for organizations like ISI and others. But we need to also invest in new alternative schools that are teaching what we think should be taught. But for a moment, would you just think with me, what if? What if there was a university where it was devoted to the pursuit and love of truth? It wanted its students to believe in truth and not be post-truth and not be triggered by claims of truth. What if there was a university, instead of obsessing about safe spaces, microaggressions, and creating a snowflake culture, challenged students to become resilient and wouldn't shut down during the pandemic? By the way, CCU, we went back to class in the fall of 2020. We stayed open. We stayed open because our students did not want to put their future on hold. And now we look back and we're so glad that we did. What if there was a university devoted to teaching students how to learn and think for themselves, how to speak confidently and write clearly and effective and become great readers? And they became lifelong learners because of the skills they learned at their school. What if there was a university that encouraged debate and taught students to listen respectfully and civilly to one another, presenting reasoned arguments and listening to other points of view? By the way, we have had debates on campus this past semester. Debate is dying in university culture. Why is it dying? Because people don't believe in debate anymore. They believe in power. Our debate team's doing well all over the country. At Yale Law School this past spring, you probably heard the story of how a bipartisan free speech panel was shut down. The students wouldn't allow it at Yale Law School. Whereas at Colorado Christian University, we had debates about all kinds of things, including reparations. In fact, at CCU, we opened the debate up, and with ISI, we had one speaker representing pro-reparations, who was a white Catholic progressive, and then we had a faculty member from DePaul University, African-American, gay African-American, arguing against reparations. Now, you would think it would be a volatile evening, but students sat and listened respectfully about a very important issue in American life. It happened at CCU, not at Yale. What's going on? What's going on? What if there was a university that gave students significant opportunities to serve during their 4 years and required community service, 180 hours of it? What if there was a university that prepared them for significant positions of leadership in government and business and profession, but they were conservative students? What if there was a university that believed in transmitting wisdom and knowledge and the best of the past so that students could navigate their future? What if there was a university that helped students develop habits of character and moral formation? What if there was a university that required a robust core curriculum instead of curricular chaos, which required a basic knowledge of core subjects to be a good citizen? What if there was a university where students graduated not ignorant of history, but they have an understanding of their culture and their nation and the Constitution? What if there was a university that still believed in the humanities, that instead of transforming the humanities into a study of victim groups and oppressors, they were exposed to the best of the past and it lifted them to become better people? What if there was a university that still believed in the liberal arts, that season of life where you can explore other subjects and expose yourself to goodness, beauty, and truth? What if there was a university that taught them to impact culture in support of traditional family values, the sanctity of life, compassion for the poor, a biblical view of human nature, limited government, free markets, natural law, original intent of the Constitution, and Western civilization? What if there was a university where it wasn't a spiritual wasteland like so many universities, but they wanted to deepen your faith and help you make it your own so that you come to honor Christ and His kingdom, and you'd come to love the Bible, and you'd have a sense of a Christian worldview so you could integrate faith and knowledge? What if there was a university that instead of deconstructing your kids, built them up and built on the foundation that parents laid for them through the years? And what if there was a university that instead of teaching students to deplore their past, despise their present, and despair of their future, instead taught them to appreciate their past, throw off a victim mentality, and rise up with courage in the present and have hope for their future? What if there was a university like that? I'm sorry, I've moved from speechifying to preaching. And what if there was a university that instead of preparing students for jobs, prepared them for callings, where they had a sense of divine mission, serving God and man in whatever they do? And what if at that university they were surrounded with like-minded students who would provide community and a friendship for life that would support them? Well, I've got news for you. There are a handful of universities like that left in our country, and CCU, Colorado Christian University, is one of them. We are putting the higher back in higher education. You know, here's what some of the others, leaders, and conservative leaders are saying about CCU. We were with former Vice President Mike Pence this spring. He said, CCU is the lantern of the Rockies, keeping the flame of faith and liberty alive to turn this country around. Mike Huckabee said, CCU is building the kind of leaders we desperately need in this country, schools that have an unapologetically biblical foundation, and it's the only hope we have for our nation. Former U.S. Senator Hank Brown of Colorado, who was the former president of the University of Colorado, he said, CCU is one of the few places in Colorado where you can teach values openly. You are the guiding light for values-based education in Colorado. Ken Starr, who is former president of Baylor, came to CCU and said, CCU is, and these are his words, I wouldn't put it like this, but he said, you're one of the few legitimate universities in the United States. Well, I'm encouraged when other people outside notice the good things that are happening at Colorado Christian University. It's exciting to see others pick up the spirit and say, we need that, we need more of that. And of course, these are exciting days for the university. We just graduated our largest class ever. We just finished our 12th consecutive year of record enrollment, and we are heading towards our 13th consecutive year of record enrollment. We were once again acknowledged by the American Council of Trustees and Alumni for the 7th year for our award-winning robust core curriculum. We are poised to break ground for the Bill Armstrong Center that we can't wait to have put up. we're putting before students an educational model of competence, character, Christ-centered faith, and Constitution, a belief in our Constitution. And by the way, we are the most pro-life university in the United States. So, friends, later today, you're going to be hearing about a new public policy initiative at CCU where we're going to be inviting you to help us. And what we need is, we need a future generation of Bill Buckleys and Thomas Sowells and Betsy DeVosses. We want to create America's finest conservative statesmanship school for future leadership in our government. We already have the pieces in place. We have conservative strategic priorities that guide us as a university. We have a think tank called the Centennial Institute, for which we're very grateful. We have the Western Conservative Summit, and we're grateful for those things. But as we look at our mission and our university, the next step for us is to make inroads in this area of public policy and scholarships for students who can study here and become our future leaders. And I want to ask you, will you help us and pray about helping us to take that next step? Because our future hinges on growing schools like CCU and producing students who are right-minded students who are pursuing an ordered liberty. Conservatives care about many different issues, and they're all important, but never forget, education remains a basic conservative task because it determines our future. It engages in the long-term battle for the hearts and minds of the next generation. And so keep in mind as you listen today that the future will be determined not simply by who wins Congress or the next election, but by what happens in our colleges and universities. The future will be determined by who wins the hearts and minds of young Americans. Will you help us maximize our impact and become a great university for such a time as this? Thank you very much.